Hello, everyone out there in the world. Welcome to the Canadian Gerety Jury Insights panel. The Gerety Awards is the only creative prize to award the best at advertising from the female vision. And today we have some of this year's executive jury from Canada. I'm Michelle Ovcaric, Executive Director of the Advertising and Design Club of Canada, if I can say it properly. And I'm delighted to be here with these jurors. I'm joined by Kaitlin Doherty, founder and managing director of the local collective. Kaitlin, you can wave. Jessica Borges, chief creative officer and chief strategy officer of Maple Diversity. Nancy Crimi-Lamann, chief creative officer of FCB Canada. And Jordan Doucette, partner and president of No Fix Distress. So welcome, everyone. I think there's lots to discuss about your experience judging the Gerety Awards, but I think something that we're all wondering right now is, what is it like being on an all-female jury? Anyone?
Well, I've been on an all-female jury before. I did communication arts the year they had an all-female jury, blah. And I actually found it very, very interesting. I find like women are far more vulnerable or willing to be more vulnerable, talk about kind of some of the challenges they may be facing when they're talking about the work, and really, be empathetic about the work and trace it back to their own experiences. And I think, I don't know, just women tend to support each other through the process as well. And it's been great to get to know these female jurors. It's been a great experience.
Well, for me, I've never been on an all-female jury before, so it was a lovely experience. People keep talking about putting women into positions of power. For me, this 100% jury almost felt like a fast forward, a break in the power dynamic just for a minute for the situation. And I loved listening to all the POVs. There were actually some little kids who came in, someone's child woke up early. And then, so that was wonderful too. Children sitting on laps will be judged. I would just say, when it comes to women, I would just like to see, I'm sure it's going to happen, more diversity. I would like to see, the fabric of Canada is changing. So I would like to see, more newcomer women, ethnic women, BIPOC, people who identify as women, Indigenous women. That would be so powerful and amazing. But this was just a great experience for me.
It was great. It was a fantastic discussion. I mean, we had the benefit of having an incredible jury panel. So, some of the biggest leaders and biggest names in advertising on this jury, which was really fun to be able to have sort of a really intimate conversation with each other. And I think, as Nancy said, that the way that everyone was supporting each other and talking about the work, there was a lot more details. There was a lot of really interesting, intimate things that people were pulling out of the work and offering up for conversation. That was just really fun. It made for a really fun day.
I think, female or not, the thing that struck me was how fun it is to talk about work with people that you love and admire. Like, that's the part that I am reminded of how much I miss in COVID, the sitting around chatting about creativity. I think we all said we feel like it's hard to do your Zoom day job and then Zoom watch work at night. So I think what this show did well is offer a lot of moments in time where we could get together and just chat stuff out. And there was a ton of work in this show that I had not seen. So I didn't come in with any preconceived notions. And so the chats were really interesting and the perspectives were great. So I'm excited to hopefully get out of this COVID world and do more of that.
Great. I guess, aside from that, were there any different experience you had judging because this was all on Zoom? So many shows, we're all used to being packed in a room together, forced to come up with a decision. Was there anything different about this whole experience being over Zoom this time around, thanks to COVID?
I think everyone missed being in a room together. Everyone is making the best of this experience, but we've all kind of talked about it in a bunch of different ways, that the experience of being physically in the same room as people, I think in any aspect of our lives, that's not something that any of us want to trade in permanently. But I think everyone also made this work for them. We, like Jessica said, a kid came in the room, or we had the opportunity to be a little bit more flexible with when we were judging, just trying to balance like the realities of all of our lives right now. So, we made the most of it, but I certainly missed actually physically being in the room and kind of feeding off of the energy of everybody.
I felt we balanced the excitement of the work with respectfully allowing people to speak one at a time. So that was great as well. And I think Kaitlin moderated us really well. But I really miss the human touch, being able to maybe hug a juror, hold hands, sit across the table. I'm a very high touch person, so I really miss that. Yeah.
I miss people's first reactions to work, because when you're on your own judging, you kind of you really think about it versus going with your gut instinct. And I can't tell you how many times I've had a juror change my mind. I hated a piece of work, and then they say something that makes me look at it in a different way. And you just don't have that experience when you're judging on your own. And so I miss those insights that I may be missing in some instances.
And speaking of all the work that you went through, for context, the Canadian jury went through work in the categories work for good, media, pharma, innovation, and humor. And I guess what everybody is wondering is, was there any work that really stood out to you or that was your favorite? Anybody wants to go first?
Who's gonna jump in? I'll jump in. I had two things. One is, I think COVID has revealed so many other problems. And so it's not just been like a sad year because of COVID, but the reality of, women being at home with abusers, kids going hungry, and a client that I work on, which is about child safety on the internet, right? So all of those horrible people are also at home spending more time on the internet. And so, what we have struggled with some of our clients this year is like, how do you not contribute to more stress and anxiety, but sort of help those issues and keep people informed? And so one of the pieces of work I really liked was Keep It Real online, because I found that they found a funny way to communicate a really serious problem. And I walked away from that being like, I feel educated and informed as a parent about what's happening. You're basically letting your kid run free in the world's worst world with nothing but creeps, but they didn't do it in a way that like made me feel overwhelmed, because that problem is hard to solve. And so I'm always looking for like, okay, if you're going to tell me something terrible, give me something to help me solve it. And I feel like they did that, but they didn't bring me down because they used humor. The other piece of work that I really liked was the anti-corruption hackathon. I thought that was so smart, and it just transcended cultures. I feel like they acted on an idea. They didn't just talk about the idea. And I can imagine how much bravery it took to execute that.
Yeah. And if I may add to what you said, Jordan, so Keep It Real online was powerful because it had that, that humor to it. And as a mom, I could just, I just love the way they cut through, gave a solution. But then when you look at a happy 15th birthday Twitter, right, which was, it sort of dealt in that same area. And I think that was so powerful too. It just like reached and, grabbed at your heart. And so I think both of them in the same area, but made a great impact, right? So I like that. And then staying in that same area of, there were so many campaigns on domestic violence. And I think for me, it really got to me because I'm happy at home, right? My husband, my kids, I love staying at home. I'm working and, stepping out of my garden. But when you think of all these women and kids and the loneliness of, older people, that has been playing on me, the whole pandemic. So there was this one, the abuse news, right? Where they had the news reader and they used AI technology. And as the news reader reads, you see, the bruises come on her face. They did it through wireframe. And for me, I don't know, it just remained in my mind. It just remained. And, I think that was so powerful, putting it out there. Yeah, those are some of my favorites. There were like lots more, but I'm sure I'll get another time to talk about the other ones. I'll hand it over to the others.
One of my favorites was the Beer Cap Project by AB InBev for, I think, Nguya was the brand, the beer brand. I just loved it because they created a new media space. If you don't know the idea, it's really around responsible drinking. And so what the beer brand did is they gave over their beer caps to other brands to create responsible drinking practices. So for example, drinking water or eating before drinking. And so they gave away their beer cap space for, let's say, McDonald's on the cap or for a water brand. And that cap could be redeemed for a bottle of water at a bar or a piece of pizza late at night. So I thought that was brilliant. I thought, a new media space, allowing other brands to be part of your brand, which is pretty brave. And now the idea is obviously spreading across a lot of their other brands and other beer brands and other beer portfolios. So I just thought it was such a huge idea, such a simple change, but really creating behavior through this simple media placement. I thought it was brilliant.
It was amazing. They also took it abroad. They took it to other countries around the world as well.
Exactly. Yeah, it really had scale. It started something small, really gained momentum. Yeah. And I think I also I started to gravitate because there was so much heavy work this year around safety, whether that was abused women or other social behavior and changes we wanted to make. I really gravitated to some of the stupider work. It's the only way I can say it. Someone once said to me, don't underestimate the power of stupid. And I totally agree with that. And some of the ones that stood out for me was the Black Titanium lottery work. We have lottery at our agency and it's so hard to do anything breakthrough in that category. And to take a ticket like Black Titanium and make it the launch of a heavy metal band. I thought that was just, I don't know how they got there, but it's amazing. And again, stupid, but fun and really created an effect for the brand and helped sales. And the other one was a piece that we were all talking about that I think women can relate to in the humor category. That was for a shopping brand where these two women were going off to buy the same bag and they were two friends. And it was just beautifully art directed and the car broke in half and they just, it was just their whole journey to get to this bag that they both wanted. It had a lot of great female insight in it. I thought that was great.
And I love the Thai humor, it's this dry and you're looking at it and you want to laugh and then you laugh and then it stays with you. I just love that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I also loved the I Am campaign from Starbucks from Brazil. It was so inclusive. And I think something that I hear all the time from brands, especially big brands, is they have such a hard time connecting to a charity or a cause in a way that's unique to them. And it's not just writing a paycheck. So, for Starbucks to actually take something that is so, unique to Starbucks of owning your own name kind of in the space or having your name spelled wrong or, playing off that experience to be able to say, if you're transgender, we're going to turn our stores into a notary to be able to actually legally change your name in a country that you don't feel doing that in the public forum. I just thought was really ownable, smart, amazing, especially with, what's happening in our world and the climate. So that was a really great piece that stood out.
Sounds like there was quite a bit of memorable and amazing work. What I'm wondering is, as a jury, when you're deciding to award things, like what sort of things were most important to the jury on what was going to be awarded? Like what qualities? Was it like idea, execution, craft? Because it sounds like it was a wide variety of categories and topics. And I think even within those different forms of media, like film, digital ideas, everything. So I'm just wondering, for you as a jury member, what's the most important thing when awarding a piece of work?
I think it's all of them. I feel like that's what sets, I don't know. I feel like it's Cannes that says, I don't know, whatever the percentage is so small between who wins and who doesn't. And I think the difference is the execution, the craft, the writing, the way that it looks, the title of the thing, like all of those pieces take, a good piece of work to brilliant. And I think sets it apart from other good work. I mean, most of the stuff that gets entered is like pretty good. You know what I mean? So it's not like you're looking at terrible stuff and great stuff. You're looking at really good stuff and then looking for what separates it, and then knowing sort of that people then look to that as the gold standard. And so I think every jury I've been on, we've held ourselves extremely accountable to, hey, if we put this out and say this is the best, we really have to feel good about people sort of looking up to that piece of work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say pretty much the same thing. I think they all matter. I think the stat is 6% in Cannes gets shortlisted, and I think 3% gets a bronze, and then it just gets from there. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller from there. So, you do need all of those things to win. I think it's a great idea first, but a great idea executed poorly is likely not going to win. So they both matter equally as well. I also look for scale too, like, impact and scale. And I'm always looking for ideas that I haven't seen before, whether that's the way it's executed or the idea itself or the way it hacks the technology or just the way it flips something, takes something small and turns it into something else. So I'm always looking for those kind of little things that make me go, oh, I would never have thought of that. Like, it's just an interesting way to bring something to life that I wouldn't have thought of.
There was a lot of great discussion too in and around a brand being brave, like it's against itself. Like there was some pieces that were good, they were great ideas, but up against the brand that they're doing them for, they don't stand up to some of the brand work that's done for that brand. So I thought that was kind of an interesting dialogue between everyone around, our expectations to be brave and do something new and innovative, and like Nancy said, that we haven't seen.
Yeah. For me, I think it was also the lens, right? It was the Gerety Awards, and they said 80% of women make purchasing decisions. So I found that I was looking at work through that lens a little bit, but also, of course, impact, power. And I feel because I've lived in different countries, like I've lived in Oman, in Dubai, in India, I felt that sort of brought a slant to how I was looking at work. I'll give you an example. So there was one which was the world's tallest donation box for migrant workers. It was the Burj Al Arab, right? And I've driven past it on my way to work and home so many times. And then to actually take the world's tallest structure and use it as a donation box, to get donations for migrant workers who were out of work. And it's like there's so many migrant workers which come into Dubai, and if there's no money, everyone has to go back home. So it adds to the poverty. And I just felt I was looking at it with that lens, and I was like, wow, in this sort of pandemic situation, people were looking at new ways. It's like the beer cap project. Looking at the cap, the Starbucks. I am looking at your own locations. So yeah, I felt all, and maybe it was also the pandemic time. So the feelings, the pent-upness, the loneliness, all these feelings, I felt it just brought a slant to how, yes, it was brilliant work, well executed, but was it purpose-driven? What was it doing? Is it bringing change? I just felt for me that everything just, came together when I was looking at work this time.
I think too, we keep talking about, these pandemic times, but I have to say, in general, the work just continues to get stronger and stronger. Like, I think something that's amazing about our industry and creativity is that when you give a team, a box that they have to play in, no matter what, really magical things can kind of happen. And that's what I think we all saw was up faced against a whole bunch of challenges in production and, presenting in this new sort of Zoom reality. Amazing creative still came to the forefront. Amazing ideas still happened, which was really nice and fun to watch.
For sure. I found technology also seemed to play a big part in, a lot of creative things that I had not seen before. There was, the CO2 friendly routes. That was interesting of, finding alternate routes that, cut down on carbon emissions vis-a-vis other routes. And I think it was also taken up by Google. There was that kiddie world where, you identified through gaming in Mexico, they could identify children that had dyslexia, colorblindness. I thought that was so interesting. And then there was some, I think, there was a field, growing plants through light.
Light therapy.
That was, so I just found very interesting take on how technology was impacting creativity, scientists coming into creativity as well. That was very fascinating too to me.
So, you know, a lot of the work that you've seen is not from Canada, and obviously a lot of it was created during the pandemic, which has kind of been a way of leveling the field for everybody. There's not much people could do because of production or whatever other restrictions were happening. And I wonder, going forward, was there anything that you saw that kind of inspired you, something that you didn't see happening in Canadian work, something that you've seen now and you think, oh yeah, we could do that, or, you know, anything that's inspired you from the work that you saw, or any ways of working, trends, anything like that?
I found one interesting piece of work. I think it was in one of the Arab countries. It was called the bread exam. And it was about, testing for breast cancer in a country where you do not put women's bodies, putting it in front is taboo, right? So I found it really fascinating how they used tradition to get past taboo. Tradition was, kneading bread and making bread. And they used an influencer, a famous baker lady, and she showed how through pressing the bread, you could check for lumps in your own breasts. There were like 3 steps. And I think the results were amazing, because I think it was picked up from Lebanon. It was taken up by Jordan, the Middle East. It was because they all, so I thought that was so interesting. And I've not seen it happen in Canada, because here it's like, there's no taboos about women's bodies and things, but how that idea was taken and, used in a country, like Lebanon and the other Middle Eastern, that was lovely.
I love that idea. I had forgotten about it. It was so smart.
Yeah.
I think it cemented for me how good we are here. Like,
oh yeah.
I don't know what it is, but I think it's clear Canadians have a real culture of creativity. We get poached a lot. Our ideas are on the world stage. We have 3 shortlists on the Titanium shortlisted Cannes. That's huge out of 20. We punch way above our weight level. So I have to say that all the work, I was like, yeah, we do work like that. Technology, like we are as innovative here in Canada as anywhere else in the world. And I think sometimes we feel maybe like poor cousins to the US, but I actually think we're incredibly strong and incredibly entrepreneurial. And we know that the idea matters more than anything, because we don't have big budgets to fall back on. And so we tend to work harder at the idea and making sure the idea is super powerful, and don't rely on other tools like $2 million production budgets or celebrities. And we only have our ideas to fall back on. And so I would say to me, I think it showed me that we deserve to be on the world stage. I don't know how else to say it.
I think pandemic or no pandemic, or like ability to have a production or not have a production, I still look for the idea. Like exactly. In my brain, I don't give any leeway to like, well, look, they were able to go out and figure out how to shoot this. Like I go, well, is the idea good enough that was worthy? I feel like at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a whole bunch of stuff to be like, look what we managed to do in a pandemic. And it's like, yeah, except for the idea is missing or lacking. And I also find that like, maybe this is a provocative statement, but some case films are a little sloppy in articulating that idea. It feels like a lot of stuff, and you're kind of reading through to be like, well, what's the idea? And it's not a quality thing. Like, it's not like you just look for the like slickest one. You look for the way that they tell the story, and the ones where they just come out with the idea and you're like, fuck, I love that idea. Then you get to enjoy the ride of the 2 minutes of the case film. I think the ones where you're like, what's happening? I want to piece it together, because you don't want to miss something. But I find it's funny because case films used to be so much longer, and then 2 minutes felt short. Now they feel long when there's a poor articulation of the idea. And so, I love the case boards where you have to just like put it crisp and clear. And I wish maybe more case films didn't use that 2 minutes to kind of say everything, and instead focused on like, what is it that you're doing exactly?
Yeah, that's good advice. In the first 15 to 20 seconds, I should know what the idea is in a case study. You should have captured it in the first 15 to 20, because otherwise you're going to lose the juror and they'll tend to fast forward or something, because it's just, I can't figure out what the idea is. You've got to capture my attention right off the top.
I mean,
And then
when
you
you're looking at 300 case films and every one of them starts with, they were sad pandemic times, the
I know.
unprecedented, and they tell you the whole thing and you're like, I know, the whole world knows.
I was there.
Get to the idea. I was there. Like, I can guarantee you I was there. No one missed out on this. And so, I don't know, thinking about the context in which, every person is like, but I have to say all of that stuff. And you're like, you don't actually. Your idea is great. People are like, I get it and I love it. And then the rest is gravy.
Yeah. Set up the idea and then all the pieces should support the idea. If they don't, they don't need to be in the case study. It's not a media chart. It's not a media case study. Like, it's not a listing of all the channels you used. It's really capture.
I mean, the ideas that we've been speaking about, like, are so easy to articulate, right? And those are the things that you remember and you love because I can explain them to you in a panel chat. There's ones that I'm like, yeah, maybe they were good, but they're so complicated. And then sometimes you're like, maybe I just don't understand and maybe it's good. And it's just not as easy to know.
That's interesting. So do you think in general, like a lot of work that's coming out now or that has come out, it's overly complicated? Is it just in the way that they're explaining it, or do you think it's just there's too much going on?
Some of it, like Jordan's saying, some of the case studies, what they were focusing on was not the idea, but the data or the technology that they used to bring the idea to life. And it made it really confusing instead of, in some cases I had to watch it a couple of times and be like, what did you do? I don't like, what did you do? Because the technology exists. We know it exists. It's cool technology, but what did you do with it? And I think that really is where that piece was coming from a lot, or like just very repetitive. I think we saw the same opening 75
times. Yeah. When it's your baby, I think you feel like you're like, everyone will want to know every single detail. And it's like, no, we don't.
No, they don't. No.
Yeah. And so it's like, if you don't have to use the 2 minutes, don't use the 2 minutes. Like, if you could do it in 30 seconds and you get the idea across, like, oh my God, what a dream. I think now people are like using the full 2 minutes to make sure they jam it with all of the stuff. But I feel like if you put the perspective on, like, I don't know this idea at all, it's hard to weave through, like, where's the idea part and then where's all of the stuff that amplifies it. When you're making the case film and you created the work, like, it all makes sense to you, but reminding yourself of the different perspectives coming to the video is probably good.
Yeah, I think complicated ideas are fine, Michelle. I think that's what you're asking, right? Complicated ideas are fine, of course. Like, we all make complicated ideas. Our job in the case film is to make it seem simple and to help me understand the complex. So take the complex and make it simple. People don't need to know the, every detail about the technology used or how it was used. It's just they need to understand how whatever it was in service of the idea. What's the big idea? Set that up, and then everything else is in service of that idea.
These are some very helpful tips that hopefully future entrants are listening to when they craft their case studies for next year. So looking at the time, I'm wondering, any final thoughts on the work that you saw or the experience of judging this particular show?
I'm so excited to see who makes the shortlist and who wins. And then I was incredibly proud of, the Canadian work that I saw on the stage, with all the other great work, but I just felt so proud to be Canadian.
So, and I think it's great to have this international show, have an executive jury in Canada. We had some incredible jurors, and the work that was entered was also fantastic. It really stood up. I totally echo what Nancy said earlier. Canada has a place on the main stage in the international kind of awards scene. So, and this showed it. It was really nice to see.
Yep.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time today to discuss your experience judging and some of the wonderful work that you saw. I'm sure everybody's eager to see what does get awarded this year. So thank you all. And yeah, looking forward to seeing what made the cut.
Thank you, Michelle.
Well,
Thanks, Michelle.